She was 20 years old, and on the morning of her birthday, she came home from work to find a padlock on her bedroom door. No argument, no goodbye, just a cardboard box at the end of the driveway. Her clothes folded on top, her grandmother's photograph wedged against the side, and inside the kitchen window, her own mother, standing at the sink, hands in the dishwater, not moving, not looking out. Her name was Wren Lila Hollis. She had $1 in her pocket, and by the end of that week, she would spend it on an abandoned schoolhouse. In a town so small it didn't have a traffic light. People said the building was ready for the bulldozer. The county said the foundation was cracked. The roof was old. The plaster was falling off the walls in sheets. Nobody had set foot inside it since 1968. But what nobody knew, not the county, not the town, not even the old woman who told Wren about it, was that hidden inside those walls, behind the lath, under the newspaper, tucked between the studs by hands that had been still for over 50 years, was something that had been waiting for her for 60 years. Before we go any further, if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Because this story travels. Wren grew up in a yellow house outside Burlington, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen with a window that looked out at a stand of birch trees, a driveway that turned to mud every spring and ice every January. Her mother's name was Marlene. And once, a long time ago, Marlene used to sing in the car. Wren remembered it the way you remember a smell from childhood. Not in pieces, not in details, just the whole feeling of it. The way Marlene's voice would float up over the dashboard when they were driving home from the grocery store. Soft, a little off-key. Songs from the radio. Old songs. Songs Marlene's own mother used to sing. Wren would sit in the back seat. 5 years old. 6 years old. Watching the trees go by. And her mother singing. And the world being safe. That was before Dell. Dell Beckman moved in when Wren was 11. He sold auto parts. He had a beard he trimmed every Sunday with electric clippers in the bathroom mirror. He had opinions about everything. The neighbors, the president, the way the lawn was cut, the way the toast was buttered. He didn't hit anyone. He didn't have to. His voice could fill a room without him raising it, could make a person feel small in a way no fist could turn a Tuesday morning into something that pressed down on your chest until you stopped breathing right. Wren learned that voice fast. She was 11, so she learned the way kids learn, by watching, by holding still, by noticing that when Dell came home tired, the whole house went quiet. Not because anyone told it to, because the air itself knew. And Marlene, Wren's mother, the woman who used to sing, she started fading, not all at once, slowly. The way a curtain fades when the sun hits it for too many years. First the edges, then the middle. Then one day you look up and the curtain isn't bright anymore. It's just there, hanging. She stopped singing first. Then she stopped laughing at things that weren't Dell's jokes. Then she stopped asking Wren how school went. Then she stopped looking at Wren altogether, not with her whole face, only with her eyes. The way you look at a stranger on the bus who's already in the seat you wanted. By the time Wren was 13, her mother was a ghost in her own kitchen. Wren learned to be quiet. Quiet wasn't shyness. Quiet was a tool, like a hammer, like a key. She learned which floorboards creaked and stepped around them. She learned the exact volume to keep the bathroom fan so Dell couldn't hear her crying. She learned to chew softly, to close drawers softly, to exist softly. She learned to listen, which is a skill the world rarely rewards, but often depends on. She got a job at 16, bussing tables at a diner on Route 7 called the Maple Lane. The Maple Lane had a counter with chrome stools that swiveled. It had a pie case that lit up from inside. It had red vinyl booths that squeaked when you sat down. And it had a cook named Phil, a big man, soft-spoken, plates ready before Wren finished writing the order. Wren loved it there. Loved it the way you love something that doesn't ask anything of you. The regulars came in at the same time every day, sat in the same booths, ordered the same things. Earl Meeks at 6:15 for black coffee and a hard fried egg. The Donnelly sisters at 8:30 for tea and toast. A trucker named Hap, who came through on Wednesdays for meatloaf. It was a small world, but it was a world. And it was hers. She kept her money in a sock. The sock lived at the bottom of her backpack. The backpack went with her everywhere. School, work, the shower, the kitchen, bed. Because Dell went through her room. He never said so. He didn't need to. She'd come home and find a drawer shifted 3 inches. A book she'd left on the desk now sitting on the dresser. Once, her diary, open to a page she'd written 6 months earlier. He didn't take anything. He didn't have to. He was just letting her know that nothing she had was hers. So Wren kept the sock close. $5 bills, 10s, 20s, crumpled, folded, hidden inside the white cotton tube of an old gym sock with a hole in the toe. By the time she turned 20, the sock held $600. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and it was hidden. There was one customer at the diner who Wren noticed, because the woman noticed her back. Her name was Florence Pemberton, but everyone called her Flo. Flo was 74 years old. She had short white hair that she cut herself in the bathroom every 6 weeks. She wore men's flannel shirts in the winter and men's flannel shirts in the summer. She drove a Subaru wagon that smelled like dog hair and peppermint, and she came into the Maple Lane every morning at 7 sharp for coffee, black and rye toast, buttered. Flo didn't talk much, but when she talked, she meant it. The first time she spoke to Wren, Wren had been working at the Maple Lane for about a month. She brought Flo her toast. Flo looked up over a pair of bifocals and said, "You don't smile much." Wren stopped. She wasn't sure if she was being scolded. She started to apologize. Flo cut her off. "I like that about you." Then went back to her crossword. Wren stood there holding the empty plate, and something inside her, something she didn't have a name for, loosened, just a little, like a knot in a rope finally giving up after years of being pulled too tight. She didn't smile, but she didn't have to. Over 4 years, Flo and Ren became something like friends. It wasn't a friendship the way a 14-year-old has a friendship. It wasn't notes passed in class, or sleepovers, or matching bracelets. It was slower than that, quieter than that, older than that. It was the way Flo always tipped exactly 20% in cash, folded under the saucer. It was the way Flo started ordering a second piece of toast some mornings and telling Ren, "I can't finish this, you take it." Even though everyone could see Flo could absolutely finish it. It was the way Flo asked. One winter morning when Ren came in with a black eye she told everyone was a basketball accident at her cousin's house, even though Ren hadn't played basketball since middle school and didn't have a cousin nearby. "Sweetheart, you okay?" Just that. "Sweetheart, you okay?" Ren had said yes. Flo had nodded slowly and said, "If that ever changes, you come find me." Then went back to her crossword. Ren had stood by the window after Flo left, watching the Subaru pull out of the lot, hands shaking, holding the coffee pot, because she'd never been called sweetheart before. Not by anyone who meant it. The morning of her 20th birthday, Ren woke up in her room. She lay in bed for a long minute, looking at the ceiling. 20. She was 20. She felt nothing. Then she got up, got dressed, brushed her teeth, made her bed, took her backpack, the sock inside, the $600, the folded photograph of her grandmother that lived in the inside pocket, the phone she'd bought herself from the diner tips. She went to work. Her shift was 8 to 4. She bussed tables, refilled coffee, smiled at Earl Meeks, smiled at the Donnelly sisters, helped Phil set up the lunch rush, ate a cold grilled cheese standing at the counter at 1 in the afternoon, wiped down booths, restocked the napkin holders. Flo didn't come in that morning, which was strange. Ren noticed. But she didn't think about it long. She had things to do. She came home at 4:15. The driveway was empty. Dell's truck wasn't there. Marlene's car was in the garage. Ren went up to the front door. She used her key. The lock turned. She stepped inside. The house smelled like coffee, like always. She walked up the stairs to her bedroom, the way she'd walked up those stairs 1,000 times before, and reached for the door and stopped. There was a padlock on it, a new one, the kind you buy at the hardware store for $8, shiny, brass, hanging from a hasp that had been screwed into the doorframe so recently the wood was still pale where the drill had bitten in. Ren stared at it. She tried the knob anyway. The knob turned. The door didn't open. She stood there for a moment. Then she went back downstairs. Dell was in the living room. She hadn't heard him come in. He was sitting in the recliner, watching a TV that was muted. A baseball game. He didn't look up. "Dell." He didn't answer. "Dell, there's a lock on my bedroom door." He took a sip of his beer. "Your stuff's in the driveway." His voice was flat, the way it always was when he'd already made the decision and didn't want to discuss it. Wren felt the floor shift slightly under her. Not literally. Just enough. What? You heard me. She turned, walked through the kitchen, through the back door, down the steps, around the side of the house. There was a cardboard box at the end of the driveway, next to the recycling bin. Her clothes were folded inside it, her toothbrush, 2 paperback books, a hairbrush, the framed photograph of her grandmother that had sat on her nightstand since she was 9. That was it. That was 20 years. In a cardboard box. She turned around, looked at the house. The kitchen window faced the driveway. And there, behind the glass, behind the curtain that Marlene had sewn herself 15 years ago out of yellow fabric with little blue flowers on it, was Marlene, standing at the sink, hands in the dishwater, not moving, not looking out. Wren stood very still. Marlene, she thought. Mama. Marlene didn't move. Wren waited. She waited the longest minute of her life. She waited the way a child waits, hoping for the curtain to twitch, hoping for the eyes to come up, hoping for one, just one. Look. The curtain didn't move. The eyes didn't come up. Marlene's hands stayed in the dishwater, not moving, like a woman frozen in a photograph, like she'd been carved out of the kitchen counter, like she wasn't a person at all anymore, just a shape. Wren took out her phone. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were dry. She had used up her crying years ago, on nights when Dell's voice had come through her bedroom wall, and she'd pressed her face into her pillow, so no one could hear. There was nothing left to cry now, just the box, the driveway, the flat gray sky, and the knowledge that this was always coming, and now it was here. She scrolled through her contacts. She stopped at one name, Flo Pemberton. She pressed call. It rang twice. Then a voice picked up. Direct. No nonsense. Sweetheart. Wren's mouth opened, closed, opened. I'm at my house. There's a box in the driveway. A pause. I'll be there in 12 minutes. The line clicked off. Wren sat down on the box. She waited. She didn't look at the kitchen window again. The Subaru pulled up exactly 12 minutes later. Flo got out. She didn't ask any questions. She didn't go to the door. She didn't say anything to anyone. She picked up the cardboard box, carried it to the back of the wagon, opened the hatch, slid the box inside. Then she came around to where Wren was standing on the gravel and took her by the elbow. Gentle. The way you'd take an old woman's elbow crossing a street. Get in the car, honey. Wren got in the car. The Subaru smelled like dog hair and peppermint. There was a thermos in the cup holder, a grocery list on the dashboard, a small white cat carrier on the floor of the back seat, empty. Flo put the car in drive. They pulled out of the driveway. Wren did not look back. Flo's house was a small farmhouse outside of town, white clapboard, a wood stove in the kitchen. A cat named Sergeant who looked at Wren with the disinterested stare cats have perfected as an art form. A guest bedroom with a quilt on the bed that someone had stitched by hand. 4-pointed stars in green and red and gold. Flo set a kettle on the stove, cut 2 slices of bread, buttered them, set them on a plate in front of Wren at the kitchen table. Eat. Wren ate. She didn't realize how hungry she was until the bread was gone. Flo cut 2 more slices. Eat. Wren ate. Then Flo sat down across from her at the table, folded her hands, looked at Wren over her bifocals, and waited. Wren talked, not all at once, in pieces, about Dell, about the house, about the lock, about the cardboard box, about her mother's hands in the dishwater not moving, about the $600 in the sock at the bottom of her backpack, which was now on the floor of Flo's kitchen. About all of it. Flo listened without interrupting. That was Flo's way. When Wren finished, Flo was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "My cousin Connie taught at a one-room schoolhouse." Wren looked at her, tried to make sense of the sentence. Couldn't. "Ma'am, my cousin, Constance Pemberton. She taught at a schoolhouse down in Hollow Creek for 22 years. The town closed it in 1968 when they consolidated the schools. Connie taught there from 46 to 68. She's been gone about 10 years now." "Okay." "The building's been empty since they shut it down." "Okay." "It went to tax auction 3 times. Nobody wanted it. The county's selling it off for $1, just to clear the lien." Wren stared at her. $1. $1. Wren looked down at her hands. $1. She had $1. She had exactly $1 in her wallet right now, and 600 more in a sock. $1 bought what? A candy bar. A coffee. What does it look like? Flo's eyes did something then. Softened. Just a little. Like a window at dusk going from clear to lit. Like it's been waiting. They left at 7 the next morning. The Subaru loaded with a thermos of coffee. A bag of muffins from the bakery on Main. 2 flashlights. A roll of paper towels. And a tape measure Flo had thrown in for reasons she didn't explain. Sergeant the cat watched them leave from the front window. The drive was an hour south of Burlington. The road followed a river through a valley so narrow the morning sun didn't reach the bottom until 10. The kind of beauty Vermont has and doesn't make a fuss about. Stone walls along the edges of fields, red barns with white trim, black and white cows standing in pastures, an old man on a tractor raising one hand in a slow wave as they passed. The mountains on both sides covered in hardwood forest, just starting to turn. The first orange and red coming through the green like sparks before a fire. They crossed a covered bridge over the river. Then another one. Then the road got narrower. The houses got farther apart. A sign. Faded. Hollow Creek. Population 287. Please drive slow. Flo slowed. Hollow Creek was the kind of town that exists because people had settled there 200 years ago, and their grandchildren hadn't gotten around to leaving. There was a general store with a porch and 2 rocking chairs. There was a white church with a steeple, a cemetery beside it. The gravestones leaned at angles like old teeth. There was a post office the size of a garden shed. There was a covered bridge with a date carved into the beam above the entrance. 1849. There was a diner with a hand-painted sign that said, Peace. That was Hollow Creek. The schoolhouse was at the edge of town, on a quarter-acre lot beside a stone wall. Flo pulled the wagon up to the gravel path, killed the engine, looked at Wren. I'll wait here. Wren nodded. She got out. The schoolhouse was small. That was the first thing. Smaller than she'd pictured. Maybe 25 feet wide, 40 feet long. White clapboard that had faded in places and peeled in others. A slate roof, the dark gray Vermont kind. A small bell tower on the ridge, the bell long gone. 2 tall 6-over-6 windows ran down each side. Wavy old glass, a few cracked panes, most intact. The front door was painted dark green, faded almost to black. A sugar maple stood beside the building, its leaves just beginning to turn at the edges. The first orange coming through. A stone step led to the door. Wren stood on the gravel path, looked up at it. The step was worn in the middle, worn in a long, shallow dip from the soles of children's shoes. 100 years of children walking up, walking down. She walked up. She put her hand on the door. She pushed. The inside was waiting for her. That was the only way she could think about it later. Because the inside of the schoolhouse wasn't empty. It wasn't ruined. It wasn't dead. It was waiting. The floor was wide maple planks, dusty, scuffed, but solid. Hardwood that had gotten harder with age. The walls were plaster over lath, cream-colored, peeling in spots. A green chalkboard still mounted on the front wall. Above the chalkboard, a map of the world, yellowed, curling at the edges, tacked up with the same nails that had held it for 60 years. The ceiling was pressed tin, painted white, each square panel stamped with a floral pattern, like a quilt. 2 rows of wooden desks, the old-fashioned kind, cast iron legs, flip-up writing surfaces with inkwell holes drilled in the top corners, most of them still in their rows. Facing the chalkboard, dust covered everything. At the back of the room, a cast iron potbelly stove. On a brick hearth, a chimney pipe running up through the tin ceiling. Beside the stove, a small wooden cabinet, the door slightly ajar. The light was the thing. The tall windows let in long, warm rectangles of morning sun. The kind of light you only get in places that haven't been disturbed for a long time, falling across the desks, across the floor, dust drifting through it, like snow falling sideways. The room smelled like old wood, like chalk, like something else underneath. Maple sap, faint, coming up from the floor itself. Wren walked to the middle of the room. She turned. Slowly. She didn't speak. She didn't think. Or rather, she thought one thing, just one. Generations of children sat at these desks. A teacher stood at that chalkboard every morning for 22 years. She walked out one summer, She locked the door, and nobody, in 60 years, has called this room a home. Wren stood there, in the light, in the dust, and she knew, the way you know things sometimes, without anyone telling you, that she was home. She walked back to the car, got in, closed the door. Flo looked at her. "Well, how do I buy it?" Flo nodded once, started the engine. The town clerk's office was a desk in the back of the general store, run by a man named Lyle Hatcher. Lyle was somewhere between 65 and 100. It was hard to tell. He had a face like a walnut, reading glasses held together with electrical tape, a flannel shirt, a pencil behind one ear. Lyle also sold firewood, maple syrup, hunting licenses, and the occasional pie when his sister-in-law remembered to drop one off. He was reading a newspaper when Wren and Flo walked in. He looked up over the glasses, saw Flo, nodded, saw Wren, tilted his head slightly. "Help you ladies." Wren stepped up to the counter. "I'd like to buy the schoolhouse." Lyle didn't move. "You know that building hasn't been used since '68. "Yes, sir." "No electric, no water, no septic." "Yes, sir." "Foundation's got a crack on the north side. Plaster's coming off the walls in the back corner." "Yes, sir." "Slate roof's good, though. I'll give it that. Slate roof will outlast both of us." "Yes, sir." Lyle looked at her, looked at Flo, looked back at Wren. "How old are you, honey?" 20. He held her gaze for another second. Then he opened a drawer, pulled out a handwritten form on yellow paper, started filling it out with the pencil from behind his ear. Wren reached into her wallet, took out the dollar. She'd been carrying it folded in half, the paper soft from being in her pocket. George Washington's face a little smudged. She set it on the counter. Lyle picked it up, looked at it, folded it again, put it in the cash drawer, right on top of all the other bills. He slid the yellow paper across to her. "Sign there." She signed. He signed. He pulled a second sheet from another drawer, gave it to her. A copy. "Welcome to Hollow Creek." He held out his hand. She shook it. His hand was warm, calloused, steady. She turned to leave. She'd made it to the door when Lyle's voice stopped her. "Honey." Wren turned. Lyle was still behind the counter, hands flat on the wood, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "You should know something." She waited. "Connie Pemberton taught in that building 22 years. "Yes, sir." "She never left this town. Lived in a little room over Pearl Brennan's house her whole life. Never married. Never had kids." His voice was lower now, softer. She didn't trust banks. Didn't trust nothing she couldn't put her hands on. Wren glanced at Flo. Flo's face was very still. Lyle kept going. "I'm not telling you what to do. You bought the building. It's yours. But there's stories about that place, about Connie. Stories. A teacher don't stay in a town like this 22 years for nothing. She had a reason. She had a someone." Wren felt her heart do a small thing in her chest. A flick, like a fish in shallow water. "Who?" Lyle shook his head slowly. That's not for me to say. If the building wants you to know, the building will tell you. He picked up the newspaper. Now you ladies have a good day. Flo didn't speak on the drive back to the schoolhouse. Neither did Wren, but when they got there, Flo helped Wren carry the cardboard box inside, set it down by the potbelly stove, looked around the dusty room one more time, said, "I'll come back tomorrow with a sleeping bag and a lantern." "You sure about this?" "Sweetheart." Wren looked at the chalkboard, at the map of the world, at the long bars of afternoon light coming through the tall windows. "I'm sure." Flo nodded. "Then I'll see you tomorrow." She walked out. The door closed behind her. The Subaru started up, crunched away over the gravel. And then, for the first time in 9 years, Wren was alone in a room with no Dell in it, no padlock, no mother's hands frozen in dishwater, just an empty schoolhouse. And the light. She slept on the floor that first night. Flo had come back as promised, brought a sleeping bag, a battery lantern, a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, a spoon, a bottle of water, a pillow that smelled faintly of cedar. Wren laid the sleeping bag out in the middle of the room, right where the rows of desks would have faced the chalkboard, right where a teacher would have stood. She put the pillow at the head, put the lantern beside it, set the cardboard box at the foot like a footboard. Then she lay down. She listened. The schoolhouse made small sounds, the way old buildings do. A creak in the rafters when the wind moved, a tick in the floorboards as the night cooled. An owl, far off, calling once, twice, then quiet. Wren listened the way she'd been listening her whole life, but for the first time, the sounds weren't a warning. They were just sounds. She turned her head and looked up at the pressed tin ceiling. The lantern light made the floral pattern jump and shift, like a quilt above her head, made by someone who knew her. She thought about her mother, by the sink. She thought about Dell, sipping his beer. She thought about Lyle Hatcher saying, "She had the someone." She closed her eyes. She didn't cry. Not because she couldn't, but because, for the first night since she was 11 years old, she wasn't afraid. She slept for 9 hours. She woke up to sunlight on her face. The first day, she made a list. Plaster. The walls were the worst of it. Lyle had been right about the back corner. The plaster in the back was bowing, water stained from a roof leak that had since been fixed but never repaired inside. It would have to come down, all of it. She'd never done plaster work in her life. She didn't have a hammer. She didn't have gloves. She didn't have a dust mask. She had a phone and a Subaru pulling into the driveway. Flo got out, carrying a tool bag. "Figured you'd need some things." Wren stared at her. "Where did you get these?" "My garage." "You have all this in your garage?" "Honey, I'm 74. I've buried 2 husbands. I have everything in my garage." Wren put on the work gloves. She put on the dust mask. She picked up the hammer. She walked to the back corner of the schoolhouse, where the plaster was the worst. She set her hand against the wall. She felt it. The wall. The whole back wall. Pulse. Just once. She'd tell herself later. It was just the wind. The building shifting. A truck going by on the road. Something. Anything. But in that moment, she could swear the wall pulsed. Like a heart. Like it was waiting for her. She raised the hammer. She struck. The plaster came off in a sheet. Bigger than she expected. Heavier than she expected. It crashed to the floor in a cloud of white dust that filled the room and made her cough through the mask. Behind the plaster, lath. Thin strips of wood nailed across the studs, with narrow gaps between them. Behind the lath, newspaper, stuffed into the wall cavity, crumpled, yellowed, brittle. The way old houses used to be insulated. She started pulling the newspaper out, carefully, piece by piece, stacking it on the floor, just to look at the dates. The Burlington Free Press, December 1937. The Addison County Independent, March 1944. It was like reaching back through time. She pulled out a wad, pulled out another, pulled out another. Her hand went into the wall cavity for the next handful and touched something. That wasn't paper. She froze, pulled her hand back out, looked at it, reached back in. Slower this time. Her fingers closed around something flat, rectangular, cool, metal. She pulled it out. A tin, flat, rectangular, about the size of a large paperback book, the kind that had once held assorted cookies. The lid was rusted at the edges but tight. Wren sat down on the dusty floor. She set the tin in her lap. For a long second she didn't open it, because some part of her already knew that the thing inside this tin was about to change everything. She pried the lid up with her thumbnail. Inside, wrapped in a square of waxed paper, was a small stack of folded bills, held together with a piece of cotton string. She unwrapped them. She counted. $5 bills, tens, a few 20s, $340. Wren sat on the floor for a long time, holding the tin, holding the money. Outside, a truck went by on the road. Inside, dust drifted in the morning light. She looked up at the wall. She looked at the next stud bay, the next strip of lath, the next handful of newspaper insulation. She set the tin aside, and she got up, and she kept going. The next bay had a tin too, a different one, round, thinner, marked with a faded label that said, Horlicks Malted Milk. Inside, $280. The bay after that, a glass mason jar, sealed with old wax, coins, quarters, $50, a roll of small bills wrapped in tissue paper, $510. The bay after that, a tobacco canister, $400 even. The bay after that, an empty Crown Royal bag, cinched at the top with its purple drawstring. $320. Wren worked through the entire back wall that afternoon, pulling plaster, pulling lath, pulling newspaper, pulling tin after tin, jar after jar, bag after bag, each one tucked carefully between two studs, each one packed around with newspaper insulation, each one different, but the same. The same hand had done this, the same patient hand, year after year, decade after decade, tucking small amounts behind the wall, replacing the lath, skim-coating the plaster, painting over it. So you'd never know. By 4 in the afternoon, Wren had pulled apart the back wall in the eastern corner of the south wall, about a third of the building. She'd found 7 containers. She'd counted, and counted again. $12,400. She sat on the dusty floor, surrounded by tins and jars and old newspaper, her hands white with plaster dust, her cheeks streaked where she'd wiped sweat. She did not cry. She laughed, just once, a small, stunned, surprised laugh. Then she stopped laughing because she'd looked up and she'd seen something on the chalkboard. She'd been working in front of it all afternoon. She glanced at it 100 times, but she hadn't looked at it. Not really. Now she looked. The chalkboard was dirty. Of course it was. 60 years of dust. Faint smudges where someone had once written something and erased it again. But not all the way. In the bottom right corner of the board, just above the chalk tray, in handwriting that was faint, almost gone, were 5 words. Whoever finds this, please. The sentence stopped there. The dash hung in the air, like a hand reaching out. Wren got up, slowly, stiffly, plaster dust falling from her clothes. She walked over to the chalkboard. She got close enough to see the chalk lines. The handwriting was a woman's, slanted, careful, the kind of handwriting a teacher had, the kind drilled into someone in a one-room school in Vermont in the 1930s. Constance Pemberton. It had to be. Wren reached up. She touched the dash. The chalk dust came off on her finger, and something in her chest went very, very quiet. She looked at her finger. She looked at the wall. She thought about the rest of the schoolhouse, the other walls, the chalkboard wall, the wall behind the chalkboard, the 4 walls she hadn't touched yet. She thought about Lyle Hatcher's voice. If the building wants you to know, the building'll tell you. Wren stood there, alone, in an empty schoolhouse, in a town of 287 people, with $12,000 in cash on the floor behind her, her hands trembling, the afternoon light coming sideways through the tall windows, falling across her shoulders, falling across the chalkboard. Please, what? Please find me. Please tell someone. Please remember. Please, please, please. She stood with her finger pressed to the dash, and she made a quiet promise to a woman she had never met. Whoever finds this, please, I will finish your sentence, whatever it is. I will find out. Outside. The wind moved through the sugar maple beside the schoolhouse. A few of the first orange leaves came loose and drifted down and settled on the slate roof, like the building was nodding. Yes. She did not open the back wall. Not yet. Not the wall behind the chalkboard. Not the wall that had Constance Pemberton's unfinished sentence floating across it like a hand reaching from another room. She told herself she had reasons. That wall would be last. That wall had the chalkboard mounted to it, and the chalkboard would have to come off. That wall took planning. That wall took a clear head. That was what she told herself. But the truth was simpler. She wasn't ready. Some sentences you don't finish in a hurry. Some doors you don't open with dust on your hands and your heart still ringing from the last one you opened. Some doors you sit with for a while. You let them know you're coming. So Wren turned her back on the chalkboard, and she got to work on everything else. She called Flo that night, sat on the stone step out front, the light from the battery lantern spilling through the open door behind her, the first stars coming out over Hollow Creek. She told her about the money. Flo was quiet for a long time on the other end of the phone. 12,400. Yes, ma'am. In tins. In tins and jars. And 1 Crown Royal bag. A long pause. Then, soft, almost to herself. Connie. Oh, Connie, what did you do? Ma'am. Flo cleared her throat. Came back. My cousin didn't trust banks, sweetheart. That much we knew. But this wasn't just not trusting banks. This was, she trailed off. Was what? Saving for something. Wren closed her eyes. Flo. Why didn't she leave it to anybody? A longer pause. Because the someone she meant it for was already gone. The line was quiet. Wren could hear Flo breathing. She could hear Sergeant the cat purring on Flo's lap. The way old cats purr. Loud. Through the phone. Then Flo said, "Don't open the rest of those walls until I get there. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm bringing you a kettle." She hung up. The next morning, Flo arrived with a kettle, a hot plate, 2 mugs, a box of black tea, a pound of butter, a hand-stitched towel, and a man named Henry Peltier in tow. Henry was the contractor's son. The contractor had been Henry's father, who had retired and moved to Florida. So Henry was now the contractor. He was 40, quiet, big calloused hands, a pencil behind one ear. He walked through the schoolhouse, slow, looking at everything, tapping the studs, looking up at the slate roof, looking down at the maple floor, looking at the wall Wren had pulled apart. He didn't say anything for 10 minutes. Then he turned to Wren and said, "Honey, you did right." Wren didn't know what he meant. What? You took the plaster off without breaking the lath. Most people break the lath. You didn't. Wren stared at him. Is that good? That's good. He looked at the studs. Hand-hewn spruce. 1870s. Solid as the day they went in. He looked at the floor. Maple plank. Wide. Original. We can save it. He looked at Flo. She's gonna need wiring, plumbing, septic, insulation that isn't newspaper, drywall, new fixtures, a working stove, a working toilet, a water heater. Roughly 19,000 if I do the rough work and she does the finish work herself. Wren's chest tightened. She didn't have 19,000. She had 12,400 and 600 in a sock and $1 still tucked in Lyle's cash drawer somewhere. Henry must have seen her face because he scratched the back of his neck and said, "Tell you what, Connie taught my mother. My mother taught me. I owe that woman a debt I'll never pay back. So you pay me what you can. We work it out as we go." Wren opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. "Why?" Henry shrugged. "Because, honey, I learned to read in this room." Then he picked up his tape measure and went to work. That was how it started. The visits. Slow at first. The way small-town people approach a stranger. Carefully. Bringing things. 3 days after Henry started running wire, a woman named Grace Doyle came up the gravel path carrying a braided rug under one arm. Grace was 81. She had 2 long braids of white hair pinned up around her head like a crown. She set the rug down by the door. She looked around, said, "Connie's room," Wren said. "Yes, ma'am." Grace nodded. Once. She pointed at the rug. "For under the chairs, when you get chairs." Then she walked back to her car. She'd hardly said 3 sentences. But before she got in, she turned around and she said, "My nephew was scared of school. He was 4 years old and he wouldn't talk. Connie sat with him on the porch every morning for 3 weeks, just sitting. Didn't make him do anything. 3 weeks, honey. And on the 4th week, he walked into that schoolhouse. And he said hello to her. He said hello." Grace's eyes filled up. "He said hello." Wren stood very still. Inside her chest, something was beginning to click together, like the tumblers in a lock. 2 days later, a farmer named Ed Pelletier came by with a rocking chair. It was old. Walnut. The arms worn smooth. Ed was 76, stiff in the back. He set the chair down by the potbelly stove and stepped back. "My father built this, 1898. Connie used to read in it. After hours every Wednesday, I'd come help her wash the chalkboards, because my mother needed the school to stay open. And Connie never charged me a thing. So she let me earn my own pencils by washing the boards." He looked at the chair, looked at Wren. "I don't have anywhere to put it. My wife, she doesn't want it in the parlor. So I figured, if you're staying, I'm staying. Then you take it." He turned to leave. In the doorway, he stopped. "My grandfather built that bell tower. The little one on the roof. Is that right?" Bell got stolen in '57 by a couple of high school boys from Brandon. They thought it was funny. He shook his head. Connie cried for a week. Then he left. By the end of the second week, the visits had become something, not a parade. Hollow Creek didn't do parades. It was something quieter than that, something more careful. A woman named Ruth Hatcher, Lyle's wife, brought a quilt. A man named Owen Brennan, whose mother had been the postmistress, brought a brass coat hook he'd taken off the wall in 1968 when they closed the school. He'd been keeping it in his garage for 55 years. A young couple from down the road brought their 2 daughters. The little girls, 6 and 4, stood in the empty schoolroom and stared at the chalkboard with the kind of awe small children have for things adults don't even notice. The mother said, "Is it true the schoolhouse is opening up again?" Wren looked down at the little girls. She looked at the chalkboard. She thought about the unfinished sentence. She thought about Constance Pemberton. She said, "It's coming back." The little girls, both of them, sat down at the dusty desks, side by side, without being told, and they put their hands on top of the wood, and they grinned. And Wren had to turn around, because for the first time in a very long time, she did not know what to do with her face. She wrote things down. She didn't have a notebook, so she used the chalkboard. She wrote on a clean section, far from the unfinished sentence, the names of the people who came: Grace, Henry, Ed, Ruth, Owen. The little girls and their mother, each name a small chalk mark on a green field. She wrote what they brought: rug, rocking chair, quilt, coat hook. She wrote what they said about Connie. Grace's nephew was 4 and wouldn't talk, and Connie sat with him on the porch. Ed earned his pencils washing chalkboards. The bell got stolen and Connie cried. She wrote it all. The chalk filled up. She erased nothing. One night, 2 weeks after she'd moved in, Wren sat at the teacher's desk for the first time. The teacher's desk was at the front of the room, to the left of the chalkboard. Old oak. 3 drawers down one side. Brass pulls. Worn smooth. She'd been afraid to sit there. It felt like sitting in someone else's grave. But she sat there now, because Henry had moved the desk during the wiring and she'd had to clean under it. And it was easier to clean from the chair. She pulled open the top drawer. Empty. She pulled open the second drawer. Empty. She pulled open the bottom drawer. Not empty. There was a small leather-bound book at the back of the drawer. Tucked behind a metal box that turned out to be empty paper clips. The leather was cracked. The cover stamped in faded gold with the year 1955. A diary. Wren held it for a long minute before she opened it, because she could already feel that she was going to find something, that this was a finding kind of night. She opened it. The handwriting was the same as the chalkboard, slanted, careful. School teacher. It wasn't a daily diary. It was sparse, notes scattered across the year, some pages blank, others a single sentence, 1 or 2 with a small paragraph. She read. She turned pages. She got to a page in late February. 3 sentences, oh, came again, sat at the back. Did not look at me. I did not press. Wren read it twice. She turned the page. April. O has been here every day for 2 months now. She does not speak. The other children have stopped trying to make her. They have absorbed her into their quiet. I am proud of them. May. Today, O drew her name. She did not say it, but she drew it on the back of an arithmetic page. The letters are crooked and beautiful. Wren turned the page. June. O cried today. For the first time. I do not know why. I held her until she stopped. Her mother thanked me at the door. I said, "There is nothing to thank. She is wonderful." The pages went on. July, August, September. The same initial. O. Always O. Never a full name. Then, November. O spoke today. One word. She said my name. Wren stopped breathing. The next entry, the very next entry, was 3 words. She said my name, underlined 3 times. Wren sat at the teacher's desk for a long time after that, her hand on the diary, the lantern hissing softly, the schoolhouse around her in its half-finished state, bare studs in some places, new drywall in others, Henry's tools on the floor, the old chalkboard with all its names in fresh white chalk, a child named O, a child who didn't speak, a child who, after a year of patience, had said her teacher's name. Wren read the next entries. There weren't many. Connie hadn't kept the diary every day, but for the next 13 years, up through 1968, there were references, little mentions. O brought me apples today, and O's reading is improving. She still does not speak in class, but she reads. And O is in 5th grade now. She is the brightest child I have ever taught. She does not speak in class, but she writes essays I save in my drawer. And one in 1962. O's mother is sick. I told O she could come stay with me. O did not answer with words, but she came. Wren turned the page. The last entry in the diary, dated June 1968. Before the school closed. O graduated today. She walked across the stage. She turned and looked at me. She said, "Thank you, Miss Pemberton." The 3rd time in her life she has spoken. The 3rd time, and she gave it to me. Below it, underlined again. Goodbye is not the right word for what we are. Wren closed the diary. She set it on the desk. She put both her hands flat on the wood, and she said, out loud, to the empty room, "Who are you? Oh, where are you?" The schoolhouse did not answer. It just listened, the way it always did. She showed Flo the diary the next morning. Flo read it twice. Then she set it down on Wren's makeshift kitchen counter, took off her bifocals, rubbed her eyes. I don't know who O is. You don't know. Connie was 23 years older than me. Sweetheart, we were close, but she was raised more like a sister to my mother than to me. By the time I was a teenager, she was already living down here. I came to visit twice a year. I knew the names of her favorite students, but not all of them. There were so many. Was there an Olivia or an Opal or I don't know. Flo's eyes flickered, just slightly. There was a girl named Opal. Opal. Opal Doyle. Grace's niece. Grace Doyle. The woman who brought you the rug. Wren's heart did the small flick again. And Opal didn't speak. Flo nodded. As a child, she didn't. Doctors told her family she never would. Some kind of mutism. They said it was permanent. And she lived here. She grew up here. Then she got married. She moved to Bennington with her husband. Then, after he died, she moved into a place. A retirement community, Maple Hill, up near Middlebury. She's still alive. She's 74, same as me. Wren stared at her. Is she? She couldn't finish the sentence. Flo finished it for her. She speaks now, yes. She started speaking when she was, 5, 6. Slowly, it took her years, but yes, she speaks. Wren sat down on the rocking chair, the walnut one, Ed Pelletier's father's. She looked at the diary. She looked at the wall behind the chalkboard. She thought about the tins. She thought about the unfinished sentence. She thought about the woman who had hidden tin after tin behind the lath. Year after year. Decade after decade. For someone. A specific someone. A child who had said her name. Wren said, very quietly, Flo. Yes, sweetheart. I don't think Connie was saving for herself. I don't think she was saving because she didn't trust the bank. No. I think she was saving for Opal. Flo set down her teacup. She looked at Wren for a long minute. She said, then we'd better find Opal. But before they could find Opal, before they could even start looking, Marlene came. It was a Tuesday in late November. Cold. The first hard frost. The sugar maple beside the schoolhouse had dropped most of its leaves. The bare branches looked like ink lines drawn against the white sky. Wren was painting. She'd gotten the new drywall up. Henry had taped and mudded it. The mud had dried. She was rolling on the second coat of cream paint, trying to match the original cream of the old plaster, trying to make the new walls disappear into the old room. She heard a car pull up. She heard a door close. She heard footsteps on gravel, light ones, hesitant ones, not Flo's, not Henry's, not anyone she knew. Wren set the roller in the tray. She walked to the door. She opened it, and her mother was standing on the stone step. Marlene looked smaller. That was the first thing. She looked like someone had taken her at the seams and pulled out half the stuffing. Her hair, which had been a little gray, was a lot gray. Her face, which had been quiet, was thin. Her wrist, the one she was holding with her other hand, like she was trying to keep it warm, had a bruise on it, yellow at the edges, purple in the middle, fingers shaped. Wren stared at it. She stared at the bruise. She didn't look at her mother's face for almost 10 seconds. Marlene didn't say anything. She just stood there, holding her wrist. Her car, an old Honda, was at the bottom of the gravel path, idling, as if she hadn't decided yet whether she was going to stay. Wren looked up, looked at her mother. And what she felt was confusing. It wasn't anger, not the way she'd expected. It wasn't joy, not the way maybe a daughter is supposed to feel. It wasn't pity. It was both colder and warmer than any of those things. It was, I see you, and underneath it, I have always seen you, and underneath that, and I am tired. She did not say any of that. She said, Mama. Marlene's chin folded. She started to cry. She didn't make a sound. She just stood on the stone step, and the tears went down her face the way water goes down a window. She didn't lift her hand. She didn't wipe them. Wren stepped aside. Come in. She made tea. She did not say anything for a long time. She put a mug in front of her mother, at the small kitchen counter Henry had built into the back wall. 2 stools, a hot plate, a small refrigerator. The window above the sink looked out at the stone wall and the empty hayfield. Marlene wrapped both hands around the mug, the bruised one and the unbruised one. She didn't drink. She said, He hit me. Wren did not answer. Last night, Wren did not answer. For the first time, Marlene looked up. In 9 years. He never hit me, Wren. He didn't, with his fists. I know. He didn't. I know, Mama. And then last night. What happened? I asked him. She swallowed. I asked him where you went. The kettle clicked off. Wren kept very still. You asked him. Wren, I have not been sleeping. I have not been eating. I asked him where you were, and he grabbed my wrist, and he twisted it, and he said, I'm not allowed to ask about you. Wren closed her eyes. She opened them. He grabbed your wrist, and then he hit me. With what? His hand. The back of it. Across my face. Marlene touched her cheek. There was no bruise there. The hand had landed, but the bone hadn't broken. The bruise on the wrist was the one that had given it away. Mama, I left him this morning. I drove too. I didn't know where to drive. So I drove to the diner, to Phil. And Phil told me where you were. Wren's throat tightened. Phil knew because Flo told Phil, in case I came looking. Wren stared at the counter. She thought about Flo, sitting at her booth that first morning after the eviction, already thinking about every door her mother might walk through. She loved Flo so much in that moment she couldn't breathe. Then her mother said, Can I stay? And Wren felt her chest go through a door inside a door, because part of her, the 11-year-old part, the part that had pressed her face into the pillow and cried because Dell was loud in the kitchen, wanted to say yes, wanted to say, Of course, Mama. Of course you can stay. Stay forever. Stay until I am safe again. Stay until everything is the way it used to be. But she wasn't 11 anymore. She was 20. She had a schoolhouse. She had $12,400 in tins. And a diary with the name of a child who said her teacher's name in 1955. And an unfinished sentence on a chalkboard. And a list of names in white chalk under it. She had become someone in this room. She had become someone her mother had not been there to watch become. And she could not be the place her mother hid. Because if she was the place her mother hid, then who was Wren? Who would Wren have been allowed to be? Inside a house, inside a schoolhouse, where her mother was hiding. She would have been a daughter again, a daughter to a woman who had stood at the kitchen sink, while her child sat on a cardboard box at the end of the driveway. Wren said, "Mama, look at me." Marlene looked up. Wren said, "I love you." Marlene began to cry again. But the crying stopped. "You can't stay here." Marlene's mouth opened. "You can stay in town. I'll get you a room. There's a room above Lyle's general store. Lyle is a friend. He'll rent it to you. I'll pay the first month. Wren, you can stay there. As long as you need to. You can find work in Hollow Creek. There's the diner. There's the post office. There's plenty. You can build a life. Wren, but you cannot stay in this schoolhouse with me." "Why?" Wren took a breath. She said, "Because you stood at the window, Mama, while I was on a cardboard box in the driveway, and you did not move." Marlene closed her eyes, a whole face folding inward. Wren kept going. She had to. She had spent 9 years not saying it. If she didn't say it now, she never would. "I love you. I will help you. I will pay your first month. I will visit you. I will sit with you on Sundays. I will make you tea. I will bring you bread. But this room is mine. This room is the first room in my entire life that has been mine. And I cannot share it with the woman who watched a man lock me out and did not move." Marlene was sobbing now. "I'm sorry. I know you are. Wren, I'm so sorry. I know, Mama. I know. And I forgive you. But forgiveness isn't a key to the front door. Forgiveness is just forgiveness." Marlene reached out across the counter. Wren took her hand. She held it. Her mother's hand was thin, the bones small under the skin. Wren said, "You are going to be okay." Marlene whispered, "How do you know?" Wren said, "Because I am okay. And I came from you." She set Marlene up that afternoon. Lyle did not even charge for the first month. He looked at Marlene. Then he looked at Wren. Then he said, "Honey, the room's been empty since Pearl Brennan's son moved out 3 years ago. It needs an airing. Your mother can have it for as long as she needs. Free." Wren tried to argue. Lyle waved her off. "You'll buy something at the store every week. We'll call it even." She bought a box of tea. She brought it up to the room above the store. There was a single bed, a small dresser, a window that looked out at the covered bridge, a radiator that clicked, a small bathroom with a clawfoot tub. It was a good room, a safe room, a room where her mother could sleep without being asked anything. Marlene sat on the edge of the bed, the bag she'd packed at 4 a.m. at her feet, her hands in her lap. Wren put the tea on the dresser. She turned to leave. In the doorway, her mother said, "Wren." "Yes, Mama." "Will you come tomorrow?" Wren turned. She looked at her mother. She said, "I'll come Sunday. Every Sunday. From now on. I will come Sunday. We will have tea. We will not talk about Dell. We will sit together. And if you would like, we will make a pie." Marlene nodded. She closed her eyes. She said, "Sunday." Wren went down the stairs. She got in the Subaru that Flo had loaned her. She drove back to the schoolhouse, and when she got out of the car, she walked into the empty schoolroom and she sat down on the rocking chair, and she put her face in her hands. And for the first time since she was 11 years old, she cried. Not silently, loudly, like a child, like someone was finally allowed to. The schoolhouse held her. Old buildings know how to do that. It snowed 3 days later. Just a dusting. Not enough to stick, but enough to make everything quiet. Wren was painting the trim when the truck pulled up. She heard the engine before she saw it. She knew the engine. Of course she knew it. She had heard it for 9 years. It was Dell. She put down the brush. She went to the door. She did not open it. She watched through the glass. Dell got out of the truck. But something was wrong. He didn't slam the door. He didn't stomp up the path. He didn't have the way of moving through space he had always had, the way that took up everything, the way that ate the air. He moved like a man who had been emptied. His shoulders were down. His coat was open. His hair, which he always combed every morning in the bathroom mirror with the comb on the shelf, was wild, sticking up on one side. His eyes were red. He stopped at the bottom of the stone step. He looked up at the schoolhouse. He looked at Wren through the glass, and he said, she couldn't hear him through the door, but she saw his mouth. He said, "Help me." She opened the door. She did not let him in. She stood in the doorway. Coat, boots, paint on her hands. He stood at the bottom of the step, like a man at a courtroom, like a man in the dock. He was not the same man. She did not know yet how. But he was not. She said, "Why are you here?" He swallowed. "Wren." "Don't say my name." He flinched. "Wren, I owe." "What?" "Money. I owe money. Wren. To the wrong people. I owe." "How much?" He looked at his boots. 11,000. She made a sound. Not a laugh. Not a word. Just a sound. "I heard. Wren. I heard you. Found something. in the walls. I don't know if it's true, but I heard. And I just ran. His voice was breaking. His voice, Dell's voice, the voice that had filled her childhood the way smoke fills a closed kitchen, was breaking. Just a little. Just enough to, they said. They said they'd come for me. Ren. They said. If I don't, I'm a dead man. I'm a dead man, Ren. He started to cry. Dell was crying in the gravel, at the bottom of her stone step, in the cold. Ren stood in the doorway. She watched him. She did not move. Inside her, there was no triumph. Inside her, there was no fear. Inside her, there was a slow, quiet, a quiet that had been 20 years coming. She said, Dell. He looked up. Dell, look at me. He looked. She said, I was afraid of you for 9 years. He flinched again. I am not afraid of you anymore. He did not answer. You are not getting 1 cent from me, not one. You are not getting a meal. You are not getting a bed for the night. You are not getting a glass of water from this kitchen. You will not get my forgiveness, and you will not get my pity. She paused. She took a breath. But I will not laugh at you, either. Dell stared at her. She said, because you are a man, and you are scared. And you have made yourself into someone who only knows how to be scared with his fists. And I am not going to be the next person you scare. She stepped back. Her hand was on the door. Go, Dell, go away from this town. Find a way to be human somewhere else. Or don't. But don't come back here. Don't go to my mother. Don't call her. Don't write her. If you come near her, I will know. And the people in this town will know. And we will not be kind. She closed the door. She locked it. She watched through the glass. Dell stood in the gravel for almost a full minute. He did not move. Then he turned around. He walked back to his truck. He got in. He sat there a long time. Then he started the engine. He drove away. She did not see him again. Not ever. She stood at the door for a long time after he was gone, watching the gravel where his truck had been, watching the sky come down with that small, soft snow. She was 20 years old. She had told the man who had locked her out to go away. And he had gone. And she had not raised her voice. And she had not cried. And she had not even shaken. She had become someone. In 4 months, she had become someone. She went back inside. The schoolhouse was warm. Henry had finished hooking up the wood stove the week before. The kettle was on it. The fire was low. The new walls were mostly painted. The maple floor was sanded down to the gold underneath. She walked to the front of the room. She stopped at the chalkboard. She looked at it. The names she'd written. Grace, Henry, Ed, Ruth, Owen, the mother and the little girls. And now, new names. Marlene, Lyle, Phil, Flo. She picked up the chalk. She wrote one more name. Underneath all the others, she wrote Opal Doyle with a question mark after it. Then she set the chalk down. She walked to the cabinet beside the wood stove. She took out the hammer. She walked back to the chalkboard. She faced the wall behind it. The wall she had not touched. The wall that had held its sentence for 20 years. Whoever finds this, please. Please. Please what? Wren put her ear close to the wall, the way she'd been doing all her life, listening. She knocked. A soft, hollow, different sound. Behind this wall, there was something larger than a tin, larger than a jar, larger than anything she had pulled from the others. She closed her eyes. She breathed in, she breathed out. She picked up the chalk again. She did not finish Connie's sentence yet. She wrote her own, just below it, in small, steady, careful letters. I am here. I am ready. Tell me. Then she raised the hammer, and outside, the first real snow of the season began to fall. Across the slate roof, across the bare branches of the sugar maple, across the stone wall in the empty hayfield, across the whole quiet little town of Hollow Creek, and inside, Wren Lila Hollis, 20 years old, plaster dust on her hands, a schoolhouse around her shoulders like a coat, swung the hammer, and the wall began to open. The hammer hit the wall. The plaster crumbled. The lath came off in a long, thin strip, and behind it was not insulation, was not newspaper, was not another tin, was a wooden box, about the size of a large family Bible, cedar, honey-colored, hand-cut dovetails at the corners, the kind of joinery a person did slowly, with a knife and a pencil and a steady hand, the kind that takes a winter to make and a lifetime to fill. Wren stopped. She set the hammer down on the floor. She did not move for a long time, because some boxes you do not pry open with a hammer. Some boxes you sit on the floor for. Some boxes you wash your hands for. Some boxes you bring a friend for. She walked to the door of the schoolhouse. She opened it. The snow was coming down in soft flakes, not heavy yet, just enough to make the gravel path look pale and new. She took out her phone. She called Flo. "Get over here," Flo said. 20 minutes, Wren said. "Make it 10. Flo got there in 9. She came through the door with snow on her shoulders and her bifocals fogged up. She stopped when she saw the wall. She stopped when she saw the box. She put her hand to her mouth. She said, "Oh, just that. Oh." Wren said, "I waited." Flo said, "Honey, thank you." Then they sat down, right there on the maple floor, cross-legged, like two children at the front of a class, the cedar box between them, the chalk dust around them, the fire low in the wood stove, the snow falling outside the tall windows. Wren laid her hands on the box. She felt the lid. It was not nailed shut. It was held closed by a small brass hook and eye, tarnished green, the kind that any 7-year-old could open. Wren undid the hook. She lifted the lid. Inside, there were 3 things. The first thing was money, folded bills, bound with cotton string, the strings tied in small, neat bows, many of them. Not in tins this time, stacked, layered. 30 stacks, maybe more. Each one a different size. Wren did not count them, not yet. The second thing was a letter, white schoolhouse stationery, heavier paper than they use now, folded into thirds, sealed with a small drop of red wax. The wax cracked, but the seal still held. The third thing was a photograph, a square photograph, black and white, the edges scalloped, the way photographs were cut in the 1950s. A little girl, about 7, maybe 8, sitting on the stone step in front of the schoolhouse, the same step Wren had stood on the first day she came, the same step Marlene had stood on 3 weeks ago, the same step Dell had stood on in tears. The girl was small, dark braids, a homemade dress, bare feet, her hands folded in her lap, her knees pressed together. She was looking up at the camera. She was almost smiling. Almost. The smile hadn't quite made it to her mouth. But it was in her eyes. It was completely in her eyes. Wren turned the photograph over. On the back, in Connie Pemberton's slanting, careful hand, were 8 words, Opal, June 1955. The day she said my name, Flo made a sound. Wren had never heard a person make a sound exactly like it. It was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. It was the sound a person makes when something they had not even let themselves want was suddenly in their hands. She said, Opal, Wren said. Opal, Flo said. Look at her face. Wren said, I am. Flo said, she's still alive, Wren. Wren said, I know. Then Wren picked up the letter. She held it for a moment. She passed it to Flo, because the letter was for the person who had loved Connie longest. She said, You read it. Flo's hands shook a little. She broke the wax. She unfolded the paper. She put on her bifocals. She read, To whoever finds this, my name is Constance Pemberton. I have taught in this school for 22 years. I am writing this in June 1968. I have been told by the school board that next month they will close the doors. Consolidation. They are taking my children to a larger school in a yellow bus. They will be fine. The world will give them what it gives. But I am writing because I have been saving for one of those children for a long time. Her name is Opal Doyle. Opal came to me at 4 years old. She did not speak. The doctors said she would not. The doctors said many things in those days that turned out not to be true. Opal came to my school every morning for 13 years, and every morning I greeted her by name. And every morning she wrote her name on the board. And one morning, in November of 1955. She said my name out loud, the third word she had ever spoken. She is grown now. She is 18 years old. She is engaged to a young man named Walter Doyle who works for the post office and who is kind to her and who already loves her in the way she should be loved. They will marry next spring. They will move to Bennington. He has been transferred. I've been saving since the day she said my name. 13 years. A little every month. I started at $47 a month. Over the years, my salary rose. I lived simply. I had no children of my own. I had no rent for many years. Pearl Brennan let me stay free after her husband died, in exchange for the help I gave her around the house. I tutored on weekends in the summers. I made my own bread. I walked when I could. Every dollar I could save, I saved. And once, in 1953, my mother passed. She left me a small inheritance. I put that in too. The walls of this schoolhouse have grown heavier with every year. If you find this, and Opal is still living, please, take this to her. Tell her. Tell her I loved her. Tell her she was the brightest child I ever taught. Tell her the school remembered. Tell her the walls remembered. Tell her she said my name, if she is gone. Then the money belongs to whoever takes care of this building. A schoolhouse is a place where someone learns to become themselves. That never stops being needed. Constance Pemberton, June 1968, Hollow Creek, Vermont. Flo set the letter on the floor. She did not speak for a long time. She just held her face in her hands, the way people do when they are very tired, or very full of something, or both. Wren sat very still. The snow had picked up outside. The light through the windows was that pale, even snowlight, the kind that makes a room feel like it is wrapped in cotton. Finally, Flo lowered her hands. She said, she didn't tell anyone. No. 22 years she taught, and she didn't tell anyone what she was doing. No. Flo wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, the way an old woman does. Quick, like she's annoyed at her own face for leaking. She said, "Honey." "Yes, ma'am." "We need to count it." "Yes, ma'am." It took them an hour and a half. They counted in stacks of 10. They counted twice. The cedar box held $17,300, combined with what Wren had already pulled from the other walls. The total in the schoolhouse was $29,700. Flo wrote the number down on a paper napkin from the bakery bag. She set the napkin on the floor between them. She said, "Sweetheart, are you going to give it to her?" Wren did not answer right away. She was looking at the photograph. She was looking at a girl who was almost smiling. In June, on a stone step, in 1955. The day she said the name of the woman who had loved her in silence for 1 full year. Wren said, "I'm going to take it to her. Yes. Whatever she wants to do with it is hers." Flo nodded. "Do you know how to find her?" "I think you know how to find her." Flo nodded again, slower. "Maple Hill, up by Middlebury. I'll call them in the morning." She got up. Her knees creaked. She walked to the door. She turned back. She said, "Wren." Yes. Connie would have. She would have. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Wren said, "I know." Flo called Maple Hill the next morning. The director was a woman named Patty. Not Patty like Wren's mother used to be called. A different Patty. A kind one. Patty looked up Opal Doyle in the system. Patty said, "Yes, she's a resident here. Has been for 6 years. She's 74. Let me check on her. Hold on." A long pause. Then, "She's having a good week. She had a stroke 2 years ago. Her speech is slower now than it was, but she still talks. She'd love a visit." Flo set down the phone. She looked at Wren across the kitchen counter. She said, "Tomorrow." It snowed harder that night. By morning, Hollow Creek was white. The covered bridge looked like a postcard. The general store had a foot of snow on its porch roof. Lyle was outside with a shovel and a flannel coat. Flo drove the Subaru. Wren sat in the passenger seat. The cedar box on her lap. The letter inside. The photograph inside. The money still inside. All of it. They drove the same road back. The one Wren had taken her first morning. Past the covered bridge. Past the hayfield with the stone wall. Up through the narrow valley. North toward Middlebury. The mountains on either side were white now. The black branches stood out like ink. The barns looked smaller in the snow. Neither woman spoke much. When they were almost there, Flo said, "Are you nervous?" Wren said. "Yes," Flo said. "Good." Maple Hill was a small brick building on a side road outside Middlebury. A wreath on the door. A handicapped ramp. A ginger tabby cat asleep in the front window. Patty met them at the front desk. She was 40. Curly hair. A cardigan with a name tag pinned to it. She said, "Opal is in the sunroom," Flo said. "Thank you." Patty led them down a short hallway. Past a row of doors. Past a small living room where 2 old men were watching the news. Past a craft table where a woman in a wheelchair was painting birds on rocks. The sunroom was at the end. It was glass on 3 sides. Snow on the other side of the glass. A wood floor. A few chairs. A small table. A radio playing softly. Some kind of old country song. A woman's voice. In the chair closest to the window was Opal Doyle. She was small. That was the first thing Wren noticed. She was small the way a sparrow is small. Compact. Tucked in. A blue afghan over her knees. White hair, short and curly. Her hands folded in her lap. Exactly the way the little girl's hands had been folded on the stone step in 1955. Opal looked up. She saw Flo. Her eyes went bright. She said, "Florence." Slow. Each syllable separate but clear. Flo crossed the room, took her hands, bent down and kissed her cheek. Opal said, "It has been so long," Flo said. "I know, honey. I know." Opal looked past Flo, at Wren, at the cedar box. She did not speak for a moment. Then she said, "Who is this?" Flo turned, pulled Ren into the room, said, "This is Ren. She owns the schoolhouse now." Opal's mouth opened. She did not speak. She just opened her mouth and closed it and opened it again. Flo said, "She found something." Opal looked at the cedar box. She said, one word, "Show me." Ren knelt. She had not planned to kneel, but her body knew before her head did. She knelt by Opal's chair. She set the cedar box on Opal's afghan, across her knees. Her hands were shaking. She opened the lid. Opal looked inside. She did not look at the money first. She did not look at the letter. She reached down with one trembling hand, with one slow, careful hand, the hand of a 74-year-old woman who had once been a girl who would not speak. And she took out the photograph. She held it up. She turned it over. She read the back. Opal, June 1955. The day she said my name. She did not cry. That was the strange thing. She did not cry. She just held the photograph against her chest. Both hands, like a child holding a doll. And she looked up at Ren, and then over at Flo, and then out the window, at the snow. She said, "She kept it." Just that. She kept it. Then Opal saw the letter, the white folded paper, the broken wax seal. She picked it up. She unfolded it slowly. Her hands were not steady. The paper rustled. She read. She did not read out loud. She read with her lips moving, the way old people sometimes read. When she got to the end, she set the letter down on her lap. She closed her eyes. She kept them closed for a long time. Ren did not move. Flo did not move. The radio in the corner played its country song. The snow fell past the window. A nurse walked by in the hall outside. Light footsteps. Opal opened her eyes. She looked at Ren. She said, "She waited for me." Ren said, "Yes, ma'am." Opal said, "All those years. She waited." Ren said, "Yes, ma'am." Opal said, "I went to her funeral." Ren said, "I know." Opal said, "I sat in the back. I did not. I did not go up to anyone. I was shy still. Even then, even at 64, I was shy." Ren said. "She would have understood." Opal said, "I know." She looked down at the box, at the money. She did not look at it long. She said, "How much?" Ren said, 17,300. In this box. 29,700 altogether. From the whole building." Opal made a small surprise sound. She said, "From a teacher's salary in 1946. Ren said, "Yes, ma'am, and an inheritance from her mother, and summer tutoring, and a life lived as small as a person can live." Opal said, "Saved for me." Wren said. Saved for you. Opal closed her eyes again. When she opened them this time, there was something different in her face. Not tears, not joy. Something stiller, something settled, like a coin dropping into a well after a long way down. She said, Honey, Wren said. Yes, ma'am, Opal said. I do not need this money, Wren said. Ma'am, Opal said. I have a husband who is gone. I have 3 children who are grown. I have 7 grandchildren. I have a home here. I have a pension. I have. Her voice slowed. I have a life she gave me. Already, Wren said. Ma'am, you can take whatever you want, Opal said. I want the photograph. Wren said. Of course, Opal said. And I want the letter. Wren said. Of course, Opal said. And I want you to take that money, honey, and you give it back to that schoolhouse. You give it to children, the way she gave it to me. Wren said. Ma'am, are you sure? Opal looked at her for a long moment. She said, She built me. With her hands, with her chalk, with her patience. The thing she gave me was not money. The thing she gave me was. She paused. She closed her eyes. She found the word. Was my name. Wren put her hand on Opal's hand. Opal opened her eyes. She said, She gave me my name, honey. And I want her to give somebody else's name to them with this money. Do you understand me? Wren said. Yes, ma'am, Opal said. Make a school again. Wren said, I will. Opal smiled. It was the same smile from 1955. Almost. The smile that hadn't quite made it to her mouth, but was completely in her eyes. They sat for an hour. Opal asked Wren questions. Slow ones. Careful ones. Where had Wren grown up? How old was she? How had she found the schoolhouse? Who was her mother? When Wren told the story about the lock, about the box on the driveway, about what she'd seen through the kitchen window, Opal listened in a way Wren had only ever known one other person to listen. Flo. When Wren finished, Opal said, Honey. Yes, ma'am. You and I are sisters now. Wren did not understand. Opal said, Connie loved a child who had no voice. Connie loved a child who has now found a place. We are both her children, you and I. Even though she did not know you, she knew you. She left you the building. She left me the letter. We are sisters. Wren felt her chest fold. Flo wiped her cheeks. Opal smiled again. She said, Come back, and in the spring, and bring me a piece of chalk from her board. Wren said, Yes, ma'am, Opal said. I will write my name on it. One more time. For her. They drove back through the snow. Neither of them spoke for the first half hour. Then Flo said, Wren. Yes. Are you really going to do it? Do what? Open the school back up. Wren looked out the window, at the white fields, at the black trees, at a single red barn that was almost gone in the snow. She said, "Flo." "Yes, sweetheart. That's what I bought." Flo nodded. She drove. It took time. Of course it took time. Wren did not open the schoolhouse the next week. She did not open it the next month. She finished the rest of the cleanup. She finished the trim. Henry came back and helped her put in the bathroom plumbing. Lyle came by once a week with mail and gossip. Marlene came every Sunday for tea. They did not talk about Dell. They made bread. In late January, Wren went to the Hollow Creek town meeting. The town meeting was held in the basement of the white church. Folding chairs, a coffee pot, about 60 people, half of whom Wren knew by face now. She stood up. She told the room what she wanted to do. She told them about the money. She told them about Opal. She told them she wanted to start a fund, the Constance Pemberton Fund, for children in Hollow Creek and the surrounding towns, to buy school supplies, to pay for tutors, to pay for an extra book bag if a kid didn't have one, to pay for the small things that nobody pays for. She told them she wanted to open the schoolhouse on Saturdays, not as a school. The state would never allow it, but as a free place, a place where any child could come, to read, to draw, to learn how to knit from Flo, to learn how to whittle from Ed Pelletier, to learn how to bake bread from Grace Doyle, to learn how to identify a leaf from Lyle. A little place, a simple place, a schoolhouse. The room was quiet. Then Henry Pelletier stood up. He said, "I'll donate my time. I'll keep the building running, free, as long as I'm alive." Then Grace Doyle stood up. She said, "I'll teach the bread." Then Ed Pelletier stood up. He said, "I'll teach the whittling." Then Lyle Hatcher stood up. He said, "I'll teach the leaves, and I'll donate the wood for whatever shelves you need." Then Ruth Hatcher stood up. She said, "I'll teach the quilts." Then a woman Wren did not know, a young woman, standing at the back. Her two little girls, the ones who had sat at the desks, tucked against her hips. She said, "I'll bring my girls every week, every Saturday, forever." The room kept standing up. By the time it was done, 18 people had volunteered. Wren stood at the front. She did not cry, but it took a great deal of effort. The schoolhouse opened, the first Saturday of April. The snow had melted. The mud had come and gone. The first crocuses were up around the bell tower. The sugar maple was budding. Opal came, in a wheelchair. Patty had driven her down from Maple Hill. Wren had cleaned the chalkboard, brand new chalk, white and yellow, in a small wooden tray. She had not erased one thing, the unfinished sentence. "Whoever finds this, please," was still there. In the bottom right corner, faint, but still there. When Opal came in the door, Patty pushing her chair, the whole town turned. Opal looked very small, but she was looking up. She looked at the chalkboard. She saw the sentence. She did not need anyone to explain it. Wren walked over to her. She pushed a piece of chalk into Opal's hand. White, round, new. Wren said, "Will you finish it?" Opal said, "Yes." She wheeled forward. Patty helped her up. She stood at the chalkboard, with both hands, one on the tray, one on the chalk. She looked at the unfinished sentence, the one Connie had started writing in 1968, the one Connie had erased halfway, the one she had never come back to. "Whoever finds this, please." Opal lifted her hand, slow, careful. She wrote 3 words. Open the door. She lowered her hand. She turned around. She looked at the room full of people. She said, "It says, whoever finds this, please open the door." The room was very quiet. Then Wren walked to the front door of the schoolhouse. She opened it. The April sun came in, and the children came in too. They came in groups, 3 at first, then 5, then 9, then 15. Children from Hollow Creek, children from Brandon, children from up the valley, children whose parents had heard about the schoolhouse, children whose mothers used to come there, children whose grandmothers used to come there. A boy of 7, with a stutter, a little girl of 4, who hid behind her mother's leg, a pair of twins, 8 years old, a boy and a girl, both with cowlicks, a teenager, 13, with a sketchbook, a 6-year-old, with a missing front tooth, a boy of 9, who said, "Are you really going to teach me how to whittle?" And Ed Pelletier said, "Honey, if you sit down right there, I'll show you in 5 minutes." The schoolhouse filled with voices. The voices Connie had not heard for 60 years. Wren stood at the back of the room, by the wood stove, just watching. Her mother was at the kitchen counter, pouring lemonade, a clean apron over her dress, her hair pinned back, smiling at a child she didn't know. Marlene smiled. She actually smiled. And Wren saw it for the first time in 9 years. Her mother's smile was real. Opal sat in the rocking chair, Ed Pelletier's father's chair. She watched the children. She watched the chalkboard. She watched the door open and close as new children came in. Around 4 o'clock, a little girl came up to her, about 6. Pigtails, freckles, a blue dress, knee-high socks slipped down at the ankles. The little girl said, "Are you the lady from the picture?" Opal looked surprised. She said, "What picture?" The little girl pointed at the wall. Wren had framed the photograph that morning, quietly, without telling anyone. It hung beside the chalkboard, a small frame, black and white. A girl on a stone step in 1955. Almost smiling, the little girl said, "That picture." Opal looked at it. Opal said, "Yes, honey, that's me." The little girl said, "Why aren't you smiling?" Opal said, "I was trying." The little girl said, "Try again." So Opal did. She smiled at a 6-year-old in a blue dress, and the smile made it all the way to her mouth. The day ended. The children went home. The volunteers swept up. Lyle locked the back door. Henry checked the wood stove. Grace washed the lemonade pitchers. Ruth took her quilts back to her car. The young mother carried her smallest child out asleep on her shoulder. Opal kissed Wren on the cheek before Patty wheeled her out. She said, "Thank you, sister," Wren said. "Come back next Saturday," Opal said. "Every Saturday, until I can't." Marlene was the last to leave. She and Wren stood in the empty schoolroom. The chalkboard had drawings on it now, from the children. A house, a cat, a flower, a name written 6 different ways by a 6-year-old. Sophie. Sophie. Sophie, Marlene said. Wren said. "Yeah, Mama," Marlene said. "Thank you," Wren said. "For what?" Marlene said. "For not letting me stay here." Wren turned and looked at her. Marlene said, "I would have hidden in here for the rest of my life. If you'd let me, I would have. I would have folded myself up so small, and I would have lived in your kitchen, and I would have not been a person, and you would have had to carry me forever, and you would have done it because you are a good child, but you would have lost yourself to do it." She took Wren's hand. "You did the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me, and it was the hardest thing. And you were 20 years old." She squeezed. "I am working at the diner now, 3 days a week. I have my own paycheck, the first one I have had in 19 years. And, Wren, I bought myself a hairbrush yesterday." Wren looked at her. Marlene smiled, slowly. "With my own money, honey. I bought myself a hairbrush," Wren said. "Mama," Marlene said, "I am coming back. I am coming back to me. Slow, but I am." Wren put her arms around her mother. Her mother put her arms around her. They stood like that, in a schoolhouse, by a chalkboard, while the late April sun came sideways through the tall windows, the way it had come in through those windows for 150 years. Months passed, then a year. The Saturdays kept coming. Sophie, the little girl in the blue dress, came every week. By July, she had read her first chapter book. She came tearing across the gravel path in her sneakers, the book held over her head, yelling, "Wren, Wren." I finished it. I finished the whole entire thing. Wren picked her up. Sophie was small, skinny. Wren could lift her like nothing. Sophie held the book against her chest like a trophy. Wren said, "What's the book about?" Sophie said, "A girl who runs away and finds a horse." Wren said, "Did the girl turn out okay?" Sophie said, "Yes, she got a home Wren said. Sophie, I am so proud of you, Sophie said. Wren, will you read with me? Every Saturday, Wren said. Until you don't need me to, Sophie said. I will always need you to. Wren laughed. She hugged the small body against her shoulder. And in that moment, standing in the doorway of a schoolhouse with a small girl who had just read her first book, Wren understood. Connie hadn't been saving money. Connie had been saving the schoolhouse for someone like Sophie, who would come in November, a year exactly from the day Wren had first laid eyes on the building. She did one more thing. She did it quietly, after hours, after the volunteers had gone home, after Marlene had gone back to her room above Lyle's store, after the wood stove had been banked down. She sat at the teacher's desk. She took out a piece of paper. She wrote, "To whoever finds this, my name is Wren Lila Hollis. I came here when I was 20 years old. I had a cardboard box and $1. I had been locked out of the only house I'd ever known. I did not know where to go. So a kind woman drove me to a schoolhouse, and I bought it, and I lived in it. Inside the walls, I found a fortune. But that was not the gift. The gift was a teacher named Constance Pemberton, who had taught a child to say her name. The gift was a town named Hollow Creek, who came to the door one by one, each carrying something small. The gift was a woman named Opal Doyle, who told me we were sisters. The gift was my own mother, who took her hands out of the dishwater and learned to wave. I do not know who you are, you, reading this. I do not know what year it is for you. I do not know what brought you here. But I know one thing. If you have found this letter, it is because you needed a place. And the schoolhouse remembered. The schoolhouse always remembers. Please stay. Please become. Please find your name. And then, when the time comes, please pass it on. A schoolhouse is a place where a person learns to become themselves. That never stops being needed. With love. Wren. She folded the letter. She put it inside an old tin she had cleaned and lined with waxed paper. The same kind of tin Connie had used. She walked to the back wall. The new wall. The one she and Henry had built. The one Henry had insulated with proper modern fiberglass. But Wren had asked Henry to leave one stud bay open. Just one. Behind a small access panel he had built into the trim. A panel that looked like nothing, that nobody but a person who knew would ever find. Wren opened the panel. She placed the tin inside. She closed it. She painted over the seam. The wall looked seamless, like it had never been opened, like it would never be opened, until someone needed it to be. She walked to the front of the schoolhouse. She put on her coat. She turned out the lights. She stepped out onto the stone step. The November snow was falling, soft, slow, the first of the year. The air smelled like wood smoke. Hollow Creek had its evening fires going. The covered bridge, a dark shape down the road. The church steeple half in the snow. Somebody's dog barking far off. Wren stood on the stone step, the same step a girl named Opal had sat on. In 1955, the same step children's feet had worn smooth for 100 years. The same step she had stood on 12 months ago. Holding her breath, wondering if she could really do this. She had done it. She had done it. She stood on the stone step. The schoolhouse glowed behind her. Yellow lamplight in the windows, even with the lights out. The fire in the stove was low and warm. The pressed tin ceiling caught the glow. The slate roof took the snow. The building looked alive. Not because anyone was inside, but because someone had finally remembered it, and it had finally remembered them. She thought about a young woman named Constance Pemberton, 23 years old, coming to this town in 1946 with a teaching certificate and no plan and $47 a month and the kind of patience that takes a year to teach a child to say a name. She thought about Opal, who had walked into this room at 4 and had walked out at 17 with a voice. She thought about her own mother, standing at the diner counter, pouring coffee for strangers, reaching for a paycheck, smiling at a regular she'd never seen before. She thought about Dell, wherever he was, driving toward whatever was coming for him. She did not wish him well. She did not wish him ill. He was outside her schoolhouse. He was outside her life. He was a man she used to know. She thought about the cardboard box on the driveway, about a woman she would have been if Flo had not picked up the phone. She thought about Sophie, who had finished her book, who would finish another one, who would grow up, who would say someone's name one day with her whole heart. The snow kept falling. Wren stepped off the stone step. She turned around. She looked at the schoolhouse. She put her hand over her heart. She said, out loud, to the building, "Thank you." The snow caught in her hair. The schoolhouse stood, white, small, warm, old, patient. It had been waiting for her for 60 years. It would wait for the next person, too. Some buildings are just buildings, and some buildings remember. This one, the little white schoolhouse at the edge of Hollow Creek, with its slate roof and its bell tower and its sugar maple beside the door, with a tin tucked into the wall behind a panel nobody would find, with the names of a dozen volunteers in chalk on the board, with a photograph of a girl from 1955, almost smiling, now smiling. This one remembered. It remembered the teacher who had hidden her hope in its walls. It remembered the child who had said her name. It remembered the young woman who had come with a cardboard box and a $1. It remembered every footstep on its stone step, every chalk mark on its board, every fire in its stove, every prayer whispered in its quiet. And one day, in a future none of us can see, another person will need a place, and they will find their way down a road through a town with 287 people, past a covered bridge, past a stone wall, to a small white building, and they will sit on the stone step, and they will look up, and the schoolhouse will remember them too. If this story moved you tonight, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and tell us in the comments, what is the place that held you when nothing else would? We want to know. We want to remember it with you. We will see you in the next one.